Hello and welcome to the video for patrons this week. So this may not be very long of a video, but this week we read Acts 27, almost done with the book. And this is, of course, a lot of sea time. Paul's on the sea, and of course it ends with the ship being smashed to bits. But thankfully they are close to Malta when the boat breaks up. And in fact, it's the bay that tradition says is where they landed is called St. Paul's Bay, even today. But I thought I'd take a few moments just to look at some aspects of the ship part, the seafaring part, matey, of Acts 27. So, first of all, traveling in winter. This, you may know this already, but it's generally the case that they did not travel on the sea, at least not in the open Mediterranean much, when it was winter. That there were certain times that you just didn't travel on the sea if you were smart. Now there were some who were risk takers, and as I'll say in a minute, the Emperor Claudius tried to provide incentives for risk takers to try to get grain to Rome, because Rome got nervous. The grain came from Egypt. And so coming that particular direction was very dangerous during the winter. And Rome got a little unsettled, apparently, when grain ships, did not arrive. This is very understandable. And so Claudius tried to provide incentives to try to get them to travel more. If you're Latin, I'll make you a Roman citizen if you'll do these sorts of things. And I'll pay for your damages if your ship gets damaged. Of course, it occurs to me that if you're dead, they're not going to pay you any damages, for the ship. But ship owners didn't often sail. That's the other thing, though. Most of the time, ship owners, if they were wealthy enough to have big ships, that they didn't sail themselves. Although that's another point of debate here. The word that's used here might easily mean ship owner, but this is a very large ship, right? 270 some passengers on board, 276 passengers, was it? That's a big ship, so the person that owns that ship presumably has a little bit of money. And so that type of person might own several ships. Are they going to sail? Well, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Basically, traveling in winter is bad. And the Jewish rabbinic literature basically would say, don't travel on the sea after the Feast of Tabernacles, which happened late in the year. Now, if Paul is traveling in the year 59, which is very commonly suggested, 60 is another possibility, but if Paul is traveling in AD 59, then the fast, which he says is past, the Day of Atonement, was October the 5th in the year 59. And then the Feast of Tabernacles was October the 8th in that year. And so they're cutting it close, right? Paul's spidey sense is going off. Not only that, but he's had some experience with shipwrecks before this point. 2 Corinthians suggests that he'd been shipwrecked before. And so this is not his first time at sea. In fact, it says there in 2 Corinthians that he spent a day and the night on the ocean, and I don't mean on a ship. And so anyway, it's after October 5th, if it's the year 59, and Paul's thinking, this isn't a good idea. We need to stay put somewhere. So here are the travel conditions, and I'm going off of Craig Keener's magisterial commentary, 4-volume commentary on Acts here. Man, that guy is spectacular. So what were the travel conditions? Basically, it was considered safe to travel on the sea from May 27th to September 14th. That was safe time. Not a very large window, to be honest. Now, if you sailed either from March to May 26th or September 14th to November 11th, that's a little risky. And of course, this is the period that we are suggesting Paul and the ship were leaving Fair Havens near, Lacia. And then, of course, don't do it. From November 11th to March 10th, take the winter off. Go somewhere, find a cave to hibernate in. So those are the dates that Craig Keener gives with regard to traveling on the sea in the winter. Okay, other things to, and of course, it's interesting that Paul tells, what was it, Eubulus? I'm trying to remember. He says, tell them to come before winter in 2 Timothy, I think it is. Okay, other elements that are in this story that, again, Keener has shed some light on. You won't be surprised to know that the gods were often invoked before traveling at sea. Is it okay for us to go, Poseidon? You know, you're not upset with us, Aeolus, are you? Aeolus was the Roman god of the wind, Greek god of the wind, and Poseidon, of course, the Greek god of the sea. So gods were often consulted before going on a trip. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the video. The Emperor Claudius, who reigned from 41 to 54, if I remember correctly, he tried to get more sailing in winter, more bringing of grain to Rome by promising to cover their losses, even offered citizen to some. But Keener suggests that still the risks generally kept people from doing this, despite these incentives. There might have been a few ambitious or desperate small ship owners. Now, if you remember from this week, Acts 27 says that the pilot and the ship owner were on board. But there is some debate as to whether naukleros, ship owner, means here ship owner, or whether it simply means the person who's in charge. My sense is that the majority probably think that it's the ship owner, which is interesting. The ship owner isn't consulted in some of the later decisions in the story, but it doesn't seem to me. If I remember correctly. But the other person is the pilot, perhaps, that is mentioned. And I forget, there was an English word that it was similar to cybernatos or something like that was the name of the pilot. Now, the north wind, the wind from the north west, the Euraculon, I was reading, is the worst of all the winds. So there are four winds, the four corners of the earth and the four winds. But the Euraculon was the worst, this wind from the north, because of a fear of the Syrtis. Now, the Syrtis is mentioned in Acts. The Syrtis apparently were sandbars off the coast of Cyrene, down south. Cyrene is North Africa. It's Libya today, I believe. There were sandbars there. And apparently, Keener suggests that some sailors obsessed about the dangers of the Syrtis. In fact, some have suggested that you may have heard of Scylla and Charybdis, which were mythical creatures, a whirlpool and rapid rocks, rocky ground, underground in the ocean, is probably where those come from. And so I think there's a tradition that there was a Scylla that lived around the Syrtis. And so sailors did not want to come in that direction down towards Cyrene, which is, of course, where the Huraculon was blowing ships because it came from the northwest direction. Now, Keener also suggests that this wind could have come from Mount Ida on Crete, that winds coming down off of the mountain could have been what blew in that direction. Well, I think that's all I have. There is debate over what the vessels were. So if you remember, there are a couple vessels that they lower. They're very ambiguously named in Acts 27. One it calls the skuos and the skue, both of which basically mean lower the vessel. It kind of reminds me of Princess Bride. Lower the thing. No, the other thing. So they lower the skuos and then they lower the skue. But what are we talking about here? Well, some of the possibilities are the yard. So the yard is the cross, the horizontal thing on the mast. And so you want to bring the center of gravity down closer to the ground, right? Because the higher the center of gravity is, the more the ship's going to go like this. And so at one of these, either the skuos or the skue, surely one of them is the yard. I think Keener suggests that maybe the skue was the yard. But at some point here, they're taking the skeway and bringing it down to the surface of the ship to kind of get the center of gravity closer to the surface. And then the other one might have been like a drag, an anchor that's meant to kind of slow things down. You know, you lower it, a lead weight of some kind into the water to kind of keep the boat from, to kind of provide some resistance to kind of craziness in wind. So there you have it. A little bit of research I've done, not a lot, but a little bit of research I've done into some of the aspects of the storm and the sailing aspects of this story. Fun stuff. I apologize that I don't know more, but I think now I know that the stern is the back of the boat and the prow is the front of the boat, because let's just say that I know those terms, but they've always been a little fuzzy in my mind as to which was which. And of course, I may forget by next week. But thank you for joining me. This has been for patrons on the Shipwreck, and a few little details about sailing. It Takes Me Away. Okay, we'll see you next week as we finish up the Book of Acts.